Oh, it's pronounced lich, not lick. Okay. Huh, that would explain why people were so uncomfortable.
What's up, Chief?
Hello there, and welcome back to another video in which I talk about tabletop RPGs. If you want to check out the others I've made, then click the card in the top corner and have a little look if you fancy. This time we're deviating from the world of fluff and we're going to talk about something else I know all too well. Nerves. Namely, we're going to look at combating nerves of first time players or maybe even seasoned veterans who are getting into a new campaign with new people. As always, I'm going to be using Dungeons & Dragons as my basis because it's a game I know better. Now, I totally understand why folk would be nervous. D&D is a game with a lot of rules and a lot of acting. From a distance, it can be like you're balancing on a tightrope of improv while trying to remember an encyclopedia's worth of rules. But it isn't like that, and it shouldn't feel like that. So I'm going to try and help out with that with hopefully less flesh-based mannerisms than my previous two videos. But I'm not promising that. Once again, this is entirely subjective. Different people play different games in different ways, and that's entirely cool. But if you're interested, then why not stay a while and listen? Oh wow, Kieran, talk to the DM is the first point again. Seriously? Well, yeah. It's almost like the DM is the most important person at the table, considering they're running the game and are the cornerstone for near enough every single point in this video. Just saying. So most of the time, your game will see you and your party going for a story, but in terms of its variables, the game can almost feel practically infinite, both in terms of its core mechanics and potential story themes. This grand scale of variety can scare people, but it's something you can manage. So let's start off with story themes. Your campaign, much like our world, is a living world, and due to this, feasibly anything can happen. Sometimes you might be defenders in a utopia where things might go wrong, or it's just another day in dystopia. It's worth keeping in mind that a lot of people treat these games as escapes from our real world, so it's worth talking to your DM and other players about themes that might come up in your story that might make you uncomfortable. For example, in our campaign, my character Hirief, which I'm finally pronouncing properly, I think, I hope. I'm probably still messing it up, I apologise. Anyways, Hirief found a weapon that granted the ability Weird Insight. Now Hirief is an amnesiac after spending 6 months after being possessed by his patron, in which he could have done anything, but due to his disposition and the dreams he's been having, he's not optimistic. I felt that as a character, there is a chance he would want to use this weapon on himself in hope of seeing what he might have done in the past. Now you really don't need to tell me that that is dark. Self-harm is a very real horror, and can also be a trigger for many people. So I waited until after the session to ask everyone in the group if there would be an issue with me doing this. There are many other ways I can gather together my character's story without resorting to self-applied magical axing. Now, mileage may vary with this point, but at the end of all of our sessions, our DM has been asking us for feedback, and honestly, you should utilise this. Like I've said in videos before, your DM isn't here to kill you. They're here to run the game and tell the story alongside you. So, talking to your DM is vital, and you're going to be hearing a lot about that throughout this video. Okay, so let's talk about the things that some people might find scary. We're talking rules, spells, all that kind of jazz. The biggest thing I can say here is, if at any point before your campaign or even during your campaign, you see something that you want to raise as a question, just ask it. Your characters are evolving, gaining new skills and knowledge each session, and the story is evolving too. Everything is changing all the time, so I want to tell you this now. You never need to know everything forever. We're currently about 30 sessions into the campaign I'm currently playing, and we're still asking a few questions about some of our abilities we've had since level 1. You don't need to be a walking codex, and this goes for both players and DM alike. At the end of the day, it's about fun and experience first, and if you've got a question about things that may assist in either of these, then raise it as a point. Chances are it may be a plain explanation, or potentially a dice roll. Your questions needn't be about rules of alike either. It might be about targeting a weakness or aspect the DM might have brought up, or testing the limitations of your magic. Never be afraid to experiment. Like actual science, It might work, or it might blow up in your face, but it's always worth giving it a shot. The very worst thing that can happen is whatever you're asking about does nothing, or you roll low, but at the end of the day, you're not an idiot for inquiring. It's a fantasy world. You've got every right to be inquisitive, both about your abilities and the land's curiosities. Alright, so we've just covered asking questions and the like. Here's one of the best places to do that. So maybe you're getting into your game of choice for the first time, or you're trying a new class which has many different quirks from what you've played before. As far as I'm concerned, the best staging ground for learning the ropes and trying out things is Session 0. Now, don't let the number 0 fool you. It's not the end of the world, and it's not, as some people do try to use 0 as, a gritty reboot. He is looking at you, Bomberman. It's a great tool that you can either use in campaign and in universe, or just as a one-shot. They're a great base to start explaining and practicing the rules of your chosen game, your character's abilities, and many other aspects, without running the risk of destroying your campaign proper, or throwing your players straight into the fire, because, not everyone has fire resistance. They're also a good space for experimenting the boundaries of your starting abilities, and speaking of experimenting, don't be afraid to carry that over into your campaign itself. Now, Session Zeros can cover as many aspects as you'd like. It could be a single combat encounter to help people get to grips with their powers, weapons, and abilities, or it could be a full one-shot, easing the players into every aspect of a game, from combat to puzzle solving, and maybe even solving things peacefully to, try and remove the murder hobo genes early. It's also useful in determining whether the class you've picked for yourself is the kind of character you can picture yourself playing for a full campaign. It's good to figure out early if, for example, fighting isn't something you enjoy, but buffing and debuffing is. There's little else worse than playing as a character you don't enjoy playing as, so Session 0 can really help out with that. So chances are you've taken into liking Dungeons & Dragons because of its current modern resurgence, and you know something? That's really cool. It's really awesome seeing it have a presence in shows like Stranger Things, and there are so many good streams and live shows out there that now's a good time to get back into it. Plus, if you're coming from games like Baldur's Gate or Icewind Dale, big chances are you don't need a mathematics degree to work out Tharko anymore. Curse you, Tharko. You might have even watched or listened to certain D&D streams or podcasts. There are so many I can go on about, and it's awesome. But an important thing to do is to set your expectations and become your own campaign. You don't need to replicate how a campaign is run, and you don't need to mimic what's going on in that story. And please, never beat yourself or others up over how you're playing, decisions you've made, or maybe even the acting quality. Different stories move at different paces, and go to different places, both in terms of character direction and story progression. I'm not saying that your story isn't going to feature similar themes, chances are it might do. Everything from character redemptions or falls from grace, great battles or political intrigue, or maybe comedically wonderful moments. Chances are you might even mimic the campaign I'm currently in, and start licking every strange substance you come across in your path. Theda. Your story might feature these, or it might not. The Mighty Nine, Vox Machina, the Oxventurers, these are all fantastic groups of characters that are perfect strangers, or longtime friends, played by people who may have been doing this for years, or maybe even just months. But these aren't your party, unless they are, in which case, hey, huge fan. But you and your band of, well, whatever relation you all are to each other, are on the precipice of your own adventure, with your own twists and turns. And while these other streams and shows can be a wonderful source of inspiration, take that from the guy who has a character who has many parallels to Thor. Just remember, at the end of the day, just like these folks, you're here to have your own adventure. There should be no pressure, no huge need to feel like you should be hitting their such huge heights already. You're here to have your own game and have fun. Don't forget that part. Whew, okay. Hopefully these pointers from me, a man who is nervous all the time, have been a help. Once again, I've opted not to go too deep into maths because maths is terrifying, and if you get anything wrong, someone will appear out of somewhere and beat you up with a sack full of d20s. If you're interested in hearing more about the mechanics in depth though, then I highly recommend you check out Handbook Helper from Critical Role. If you're looking for more fun explanations about spells though, I hugely recommend you check out the animated spellbook. Lastly, if you've got a passing interest in all things tabletop, check out Dicebreaker. There's some really great stuff on there and some fantastic tabletop RPG recommendations. Links, as always, are in the description. Lastly, thank you for hanging around and listening to me. If you have any ideas on stuff that you might like me to cover, then please do drop it in the comments down below. After all, these videos are for you. If you enjoyed this, then, well, likes are magic, and sharing is most definitely caring. I'll catch you all next time I make a video. Oh, and hey, you look lovely today.